Right. So the challenge is we want to load the data set bird flu cases .txt and then do some calculations and make a plot. So the first thing I'm going to do is just take a look at this data set and see what it looks like. So just by clicking on it, it's opened it up in the editor. You can see, looks like there aren't very many rows. There's just 7 rows, and it looks like it's white space delimited. Maybe. Or tab delimited, perhaps. There's some odd-looking gaps in here. So this is a challenging kind of example because we really, this isn't the kind of file you really want to work with. This particular file actually comes from the World Health Organization, so kudos to them, I guess, for not doing a good job of data management. Okay, so let's see what we can do. So I'm going to create a script. And I'm going to call this bflu. Actually, bflu cases, because there's also a data frame on deaths. And the function we want is called read.table. So you've seen this function before. It's the sort of general file reading function that R has for reading text data. And I want to call it bird flu cases.txt. Now, by default, read.table does not do anything with a header, but we know we have a header in our file, so I'm going to tell it header equals true. And it also, by default, assumes white space delimited. So let's just see where we get just by doing that. Okay, not very far. Line 1 did not have 17 elements. Okay, so one thing you notice is when I go from there to there, the cursor is jumping. That's usually a sign that, because these fonts that are in here are fixed width fonts, it's usually a sign that there is a tab in there rather than a space. Let's check this one out now. Tab. Yeah. So let's try being specific about what kind of white space. So, I need to tell it separator. Separator equals /t. Okay, so that was happier. Now let's have a look. Bird flu cases. That doesn't look too bad. Actually, it looks just fine. Look at that. So a couple of things here. Oh, where's my year? Oh, there's years. Okay. Notice that if I look at the original text file, Indonesia actually had a question mark at the end. Not sure why you would do that, but in general, it's a bad idea to do that sort of thing in variable names. R does not allow that sort of punctuation in object names, and so it's replaced it with a period automatically. I don't particularly like that, so I'm going to get rid of that period. And I'm going to do it in code. I could go in and edit this file, right? I could do that and just remove the question mark. But then that means I've changed this file, and then there's no record of how I changed it, or when, or who changed it. So much better strategy when you're doing data cleaning of this sort is to do names, is to do it in code. So I need to change the name of number 8. Column 8. We're going to set that to Indonesia. There we go. Okay, so now we've got a record of where things have gone. So now we've got some real code happening here. So let's create a file code, and we'll call this bird flu analysis.r. Okay, well, that's not too bad. That only took me 5 minutes for a tiny little file. We could do a few more things here. Let's check to see that all of those columns have come in as numbers. Right? There's always a possibility that things are a little bit funky. So let's see. Let's check to see if those are all numbers. Now, I really want to do this automatically, right? So what I'm going to do is use a function called sapply. And I want is.numeric. So sapply is a function similar to the plier category of functions. In fact, actually, I should use one of those, shouldn't I? So it's going to be a data frame, and it's going to be one of these functions that doesn't do anything else. Oops, I need to get my library in here. Plier. Oops, what's going on? Dply. Really, I've forgotten how to do this. Oh. So the next one is variables. And surely there's a way to splits data frame by variable. I'll do that. Oh, maybe I should treat it as a list. Ah, that's what I should do. Okay, because I want to apply this function to each element, each column, then what I'm going to do is actually treat my data frame as a list, because as we saw before, under the hood, as it were, data frames are lists. Okay, so I was happy, but it didn't tell me anything. Oh, so I see. So there's an argument print, automatically print each result, and by default it's false. So let's turn printing on. False is not what I want. True. There we go. Now let's see. Ah, we get it now. True, 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 true. It's true. Okay, they're all numbers. Makes me happy. So that's cool. So these underscore functions in the plier library don't return an object. They simply take a list and then they operate on each element of the list, do something. They don't return anything. So that's sometimes quite handy when you want to actually iterate over an object and do some function, but not necessarily save the return values in anything in particular. As here, we just wanted to print out whether they were in fact all numeric. Okay, so first question. What is the total number of bird flu cases per country? So countries are in the rows, so total number of bird flu cases. by country. No, wait a second. They're in columns, aren't they? So I'm going to do L again. And I want to do LA. Okay, so I'm going to take this list and I'm going to do bird flu cases. I don't want the first column, right? So that's, I'm just going to get rid of the shortest is just to discard the first column because that's got the years in it. And this time I'm going to apply the function sum. And I don't have to do any, I think that should work. So this is going to take my list, bird flu cases, as a list, and it's going to strip off the first column and pass that in there, right? So we're subsetting our thing to throw away the bit we don't want. And then we're going to operate on each column. Each column we're going to take the sum, and then we're going to give the result to as an array. Let's see what happens. Whew, it worked. Okay, but it didn't give us any names, which is sort of a little bit disappointing. So, but it's done a pretty good job of lining things up for us. Let's see if it actually, if there's a way to get the names. Let's see it anyway. So, but that's the answer to our question. But I want the names. So there's a couple ways we could do this. Countries equals names B flu cases -1. That's going to be a list of countries. Yep. And now we can do, so we've got that object, we've got that object. We can put them together. So if you recall, cbind takes two things and tries to stick them together as two columns. Countries is going to be a string or a character vector. This is our number vector, so we're probably going to end up with a data frame. Ooh, no, we get a matrix. Well, that's interesting. So we ended up with a matrix, and see what it's done. It's converted these numbers into characters. That's no good. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to use data frame. Different function. Countries, I'm fine with leaving that variable called countries. It'll, by default, it's going to call it countries. And now I'm going to do total cases. There we go. Now I'm happier. So now that's ended up as a number. So that's one way to get what we wanted. And now the other thing we wanted was total number of cases per year. And the years now are in the rows. So we're going to want something a little different. So we want oh yeah, this will work. We want dply, ddply. So we're going to take a data frame, flu cases, and we are going to group it by year. So remember, the variables are given here. Just tells it, oh, and I think I have to do that, don't I? There we go. And then I want to do sum. So dot fun equals sum. Let's see what that does. Cool. That worked really well. Oops. Except I'm not sure that it did, because see what's happened? It's also included, these numbers are way too big. And what's happened is it's actually included the year in the sum. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to write a little function of our own to just sum the part we want. And that'll give us the opportunity to also fix the name. So we're going to do function x. Remember, x can be pretty much anything. We could call this, let's call it eggs. And now sum is a function, so we're going to sum x. I know we don't want the first value of x. And we're going to return total cases equals. So that's with sum, it's with return, and then, oh yeah, so that should be sufficient. But I need now a one to go with, yes, you can't really see that there, it's not quite wide enough. But that extra parentheses there is matching up with the one for ddply. So, oh, of course, object x not found, right? So here the thing is asking for x, but I defined that in our function as eggs. So I'd better change that to eggs. No, it didn't work. Well, it partly worked. Okay, so now we've got the right number of cases. So that's good, but it didn't give us a name. Let me try a different function. Let me try just concatenate. There we go. I thought return would name it for me, but it didn't. But C does, so that's fine. We could have written this a little bit differently. We could have used the curly braces and put this in the middle, like that. If we did that, then we would want to move that parentheses down there. I prefer to keep them on the same line. So you can see the brace matching that RStudio is doing for us, matching up those two things there. So that's good. So now we've got total cases here. Everything's happy. That's really good. Now, next thing, I want to make a plot. But if I'm going to make a plot, I need to turn this data from a wide format data set into a long format. Oops. And so to do that, I need a different package. I need tidyr. That's what I'm going to do is use the gather function. Make long data frame. Well, I'm going to call it long bflu. Cases. I might be quite happy to just overwrite the previous data set, but I think this way we'll avoid problems if we go back and run this after we've run code down here. Okay, let's see. What do we need to do? We want to gather bflu cases. The columns that we want to gather together are countries, so we're going to call the resulting key countries, and we're going to call the value column cases. And now I have to say which ones I want to include, and I can either do that by naming all the columns here, or I can tell it which ones I don't want, and that is easier in this case because I just have a single column I don't want, which is year. Function gather. Oh, you also have to run the library function, I think. Let's see. There we go. So that's good. So now let's have a look at long B fluke cases. There we go. It's worked perfectly. So now our data set has been spread out, so we have different countries and we have our years. So now we have to add another library. Helps to spell it correctly. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a plot out of this, fluke cases. So the first argument is my data frame. The second argument is going to be my aesthetic. And I want x equal to year, and y equal to cases, and group equal to countries. That'll do it. Plus geom line. This should give us a function, a plot that looks pretty much like our Nebraska fluke cases not found. It's right there. What's going on here? What did I do? Oh, look at that. Okay. Okay, so that's the sort of bug that'll drive you nuts. Okay, object case is not found. Well, of course it isn't, because it's spelled with a capital C. There we go. Now that looks pretty cool. I like that. And okay, so now we can mess around with this a little bit. It really shows how, you know, some of the countries were spiking, and then the number of cases decayed away. That's really quite nice. Okay, so let's mess with this plot a little bit. I want the color of my lines to be set by countries. Kidding me. I know that's what it's called. It's not spelled that way. Trees. Huh. I'm a little afraid that what's happening is that sometimes I haven't been able to. There we go. There's our different countries. I want those lines to be a little thicker. Maybe not that thick. 2. That's better. And yeah, that's pretty good. I could mess more with that, but we're already up at 25 minutes, so I think I'm going to call that good for the moment. Save my file and carry on.